Welcome, everybody. My name's Sophie, and I'm the General Manager at English Australia. Before we start the webinar, I'd just like to acknowledge and show our respect to the traditional custodians of the land from where we're presenting this webinar today and from where you're attending. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, who hold the memories, traditions, culture, and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's on their land that we learn and share our knowledge today. So I'm delighted to introduce today's presenter, Kathy Watson. Kathy's an Education Program Manager at the University of Adelaide English Language Centre. Kathy and I actually worked together many moons ago when she was a teacher trainer in Sydney, and Kathy's been teaching English and also teacher training for over 25 years. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kathy. Kathy presented this session at the South Australia PD Fest this year, and she's kindly representing it as a webinar for us today. I'll hand over to you now, Kathy.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you for coming, everyone. I appreciate you giving up your time. I know you're all very, very busy people. So I'm going to get straight into it. We're going to aim for about 40 minutes with some time for questions at the end. So I'm happy for you to put your questions into the Q&A box. During the webinar, I will ask you to do a few things in the chat for me. So yeah, feel free to participate, please. So I'm going to be talking to you about upgrading students' language by giving feedback that makes a difference. And we're going to start by looking at our aims, or my aims for today. Okay, the first aim is we're going to define emergent language. We're going to consider why we should deal with it in the classroom. We're also going to look at how we deal with it in feedback, and we're also going to have a little bit of practice giving feedback on emergent language. I am aware that a lot of you are probably very experienced teachers, and this may be something you already do and are very familiar with, in which case I hope this webinar is validation for you, or perhaps a useful reminder of what a great opportunity it is in the classroom. So before we look at a definition, I wanted to give you a bit of background as to why this is, for me, a really important topic. And I'm going to go back to 2020, back to those times where we had to start teaching online. There was actually a lot that I really liked about teaching online. I did quite enjoy it, but there was one thing that I found very, very difficult and very challenging. And for me, that was how difficult it was for me to monitor and listen to all of my students. I found that I just couldn't hear what everyone was saying when I was teaching online. And then there was a lack of opportunity for me to give that feedback to the students on the language that they were using. My son at the time was also listening to a lot of K-pop. And so I was watching lots of K-pop interviews, and I would spend the whole time going, gosh, I wish I could give them some feedback on their spoken language. I wish I could tell them how to reformulate that. And yeah, when we got back to face-to-face teaching, I was talking to a colleague about this, and he reminded me of very old now, a talk by Jim Scrivener from 2015. It's quite a long video. It's on YouTube. I definitely recommend you watch it. But he talks about dealing with emergent language in feedback, amongst other things. And this really resonated with me, and I realized it was probably one of my favorite things about being in the classroom. And that's really what led to me putting this session together for the SAPD Fest. So, what is emergent or emerging language? I'm just going to give you about 30 seconds break from listening to me, and just think about what your definition is. When someone says emergent language, what do you think that is? I'll just give you 30 seconds. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I'm going to show you this definition here. I like both of those ones in the chat box. I like this definition here. Language that is spontaneous and personal and emerges during a lesson due to the learner's need for linguistic input to communicate an idea confidently and accurately. So for me, there are two things that really stand out in this definition. It's this idea of what confidently and accurately is. And for me, this is not always, it doesn't have to mean grammatical accuracy. Sometimes what's natural is not always, grammatically accurate. So I have two teenagers in my house, and I can tell you that the adverb is definitely dying. And yeah, not that I'm advocating not teaching adverbs, but I think natural language is something that we can give to the students in class. I think that's something that they want. Yeah. So this confidently and accurately for me, I also think about naturally. Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. I think the adverb, yeah. What are we going to do? Anyway, the other thing is the learner's need. So when students are talking in class, they're trying to communicate something. They will feel the need if they've got a language gap. They're, oh, I need to say that. I want to say that, but I don't quite have the language. Yeah, and that's what we give them as teachers. That's where we step in and say, this is what you're missing. This is what you need. Here's the language that you're looking for. And I think that's nice. As teachers, we love to give, right? And it's great that we can give them what they need when they feel that they need it. Yeah, that's what this emergent language, this feedback on emergent language can do. So I think it's pretty cool. All right, we're going to have a look at some examples on the next slide. And I'm going to ask you to participate in the chat box here. So if we have a look at number 1 here, we've got, I don't like the taste when I eat mushrooms. Yeah. In the chat box, please, I'd like you to give that utterance, give that student's utterance a bit of an upgrade. Yeah. What would you say? Okay, please type into the chat box. Thank you, Sophia. Yeah, we'll just do the first one first. Yep, good. Yep, lovely. Yep, I don't like the taste of mushrooms. I don't like mushrooms. Also great. Yep. All right, have a look at number 2. We've got don't tell anyone my secret. How would you give that utterance an upgrade? Make it better. Yep, keep it a secret. Nice. Promise not to tell anyone my secret. Lovely. Yep. Please don't tell anyone. Great. Very natural, right? These are all very natural phrases. Mum's the word. Okay, love it. Yep, very good. So I've got here, don't tell a soul, don't say a word to anyone. But all of these that we've got in the chat bot here, natural, accurate, confident. Very nice. Yeah. What about this next one here? We've got number 3. I had a nice time. I have a bit of a problem with the word nice. I don't have a problem with it. I just think, we've got such a rich language. What else are we going to do here instead of I had a nice time? Yep. I had a lovely time. Good. Yeah, lovely. Awesome. Great. Yeah, lovely. Gee, it was great and nice. Obviously, it does depend on the context, what the students are talking about, what they're trying to express, but anything, give them some other adjectives in here. Let's get them away from nice. Yeah. All right, and the last one, I seem to hear this one a lot in class. On the weekend, I slept until 12 p.m. What else could we feed in here? Yeah, nice. See, I say nice a lot. I should give myself some feedback. Good. Lovely. Yeah, had a chill weekend. That's nice. Yeah, no, we're all looking forward to the weekend now. Yeah. So I had a lie-in or I slept really late. Yeah, fantastic work. So if we look back at the students and utterances, I don't like the taste when I eat mushrooms. There are no errors in those utterances. They're all absolutely fine. The communication is there. The meaning is clear. They're just maybe not what we would say, not really that natural. So emergent language, I think, is really all about giving your students a bit of an upgrade. Yeah, taking what they've said, which is perfectly fine, perfectly okay, and making it a little bit better. So I remember watching a class where a student was talking about their homestay family's cooking and describing the meal. And the student said, the food was delicious, the dessert was delicious, delicious, delicious. About 17 times this student said delicious. And I was like, oh, please give the student some more adjectives. They need some more ways to describe food that is delicious. Just give them something so they feel that they're expanding their range a little bit. All right, good. Nice work, everybody. Let's keep going. A little bit more on what it is. I've got that definition up there just because I think it's very, very helpful. And then for our visual learners, we've got a really nice diagram here that I think explains nicely what emergent language is. It's that sort of intersection when you have the context. You have your non-target language errors. So it's not necessarily the language that you're teaching from the course book or your syllabus, and the student's own language. And it's that little bit in the middle where there's that real opportunity for us to give students what they need. Yeah. All right, next task for you all is a little bit of true or false, and we'll use the chat box again here. You can either give me a thumbs up or thumbs down, or a T for true or F for false, whatever's easiest for you. But just want to see what you think about these statements here. So the first one is learners learn what we teach them. What do you think? Not really, yeah, good. So mainly false here. And obviously, if we were face to face, I could ask you, what do they learn? I'm a firm believer that students learn what they need, right? If you need something, your motivation is there to learn it. So I think that's an important thing to remember when we're talking about dealing with emergent language in feedback, that learners often learn what they need. All right, second one. Emergent language is target language. True or false? Yeah, good, lovely, everyone. False. So it's not course book dictated language. It's not from your syllabus. It's what sort of pops up in the lesson around all of that. Yeah. Good. What about number 3? Emergent language often includes errors or a breakdown in confident and accurate communication. True or false? Yeah. Good, lovely, everyone. Yeah, true. It often is errors or some kind of hesitation, or that, they're not quite communicating exactly what they want, but sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's like the examples that we saw before that, just not quite what we would say naturally. All right, and this last one here, opportunities for emergent language are more likely to occur in fluency-focused tasks. True or false? Yeah, good. Thanks, everyone. Definitely true there. So obviously there's quite a big difference here depending on the level that you teach. If you've got sort of intermediate or upper intermediate students, I think that there's a real need to be focusing on emergent language in feedback with those students. If you've got the lower level of students, you may well be more focused on that target language, building those strong foundations for the students. All right, good. I think that's probably covered the kind of what is emergent language, and now we're going to look at really why we should focus on it. So the first one is the one that I've talked about already. I think, yeah, they they learn what they need. So not necessarily what the coursework or the assessment or the syllabus says, but what the students want to communicate. Yeah. So we're not deciding what they need in advance here. They're actually asking, or they're showing us that they need or they want this language. Help learners at the point of need. I think this is quite powerful. Students don't have to wait. So if they do a speaking task and there is a gap in their language, or they're repeating the same word, they're saying delicious, 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 that feeling of wanting to say something and not really being able to do it, that's a fresh feeling for the students. If we can then come in and feedback and replace that feeling of, oh, I've got a gap, I don't really know how to say it, with, oh, now you know how to say it. This is the language you can use in that situation. I think that's probably a really good feeling for the students. You know, that's a bit of gold for language learners. Students want to be stretched, challenged. They want that opportunity to get that language input and use that new language. And I think this is particularly important for that sort of intermediate, upper intermediate level. We don't want them to plateau. We want them to feel like they're getting some new language every lesson. I think that's also what they pay us for, to listen and give them more language. They want us to push them gently, but push them. Yes, if we want students to speak in class, and we do, this is a really good way to validate the students' active participation in speaking tasks, because they can see that we're listening. They're getting the direct feedback on what they've said. And I think this focus on emergent language and feedback really has a very positive effect on students' participation in the class overall. They get that validation. Yeah, they value the teacher feedback. They want you to listen to them and give them feedback. It's also measured. Whatever your teacher evaluation system is, so ours is called CELTS. Feedback is an area that's asked about, and it's often an area that scores a little bit lower than the other areas in the CELTS. And I think this is one way that students really feel like they're getting direct, targeted feedback from their teacher. Yeah, and it helps them communicate in the way they want, naturally, confidently, accurately. They're already trying to say it. So, you know, if we can upgrade their language a little bit, improve it, they're able to say what they want, how they want to say it. So that's the why. We're going to move on now then to the how we do it. So how do we deal with emergent language in feedback? So the first thing we have to do whenever we give the students any speaking is we need to monitor, we need to listen, and we need to make sure that we're doing this actively. So for me, this means walking around while my students are speaking with a pencil and a piece of paper. I normally have the handout or whatever, and I actually make notes on top of the handout. I'm not very good at remembering things like that. You might be much better than me. Whatever works for you. If you can remember it, fabulous. If not, I suggest just making a note. And then you make a note of the things the students say that aren't 100% accurate or natural or bland. I found it hard to describe this. For me, it's something that if I hear it and I think it's a bit vanilla, and I know some people love vanilla, I also love vanilla, but it's bland, it's boring. You know, we can upgrade it, we can make it better. Yeah, that's the kind of language I think that the students really appreciate getting feedback on. Easy way to do it. Would I say that? If the answer is no, then tell them what you would say. Yeah, give them that upgrade. If you think it's language the whole class would benefit from, then you're going to get to the whiteboard or your smart board or whatever your visual, whatever you're using in the classroom. But I do think some kind of written record here is critical. I think it's very, very helpful. So we get to the whiteboard, we do a little bit of reformulation. Okay, so what's missing here? We might be filling in a lexical. Can write in the chat box, please. Yes, thank you, Jazz. Thank you, Sophia. Lovely. Yeah, filling in a lexical gap. So you can actually hear that the students are missing a certain phrase or a certain word or a certain structure, whatever it is. Yeah, they've got that gap. You can fill that gap for them. Yeah, the delicious example. Yeah, there was a lexical gap there. We can give them some other synonyms. Yeah. Yeah, no, all good, Jazz. It just means you tell them how they should say it. And we're actually going to look at some language on the next slide that will show you how to do that. Yeah, no, good question. It might just be increasing that grammatical accuracy. So a little bit of polishing is also part of that. You might be highlighting appropriacy on your whiteboard. For example, if a student in a peer discussion says you are wrong to a peer, you might ask them if they would say that to, someone they've only just met. Would they say that to their boss? Just checking that they understand that you are wrong is quite a direct thing to say, and I probably wouldn't use that unless I knew the person very, very well. And I think probably the most important one is making sure that we're stretching and challenging the students by building on what they already know. One way that we can do that very easily on the whiteboard is by using, this kind of line, this blue line. So if you've got stretching students, you just elicit a synonym. What else could we say here instead of stretching? Challenging. Good. And you're feeding in that language to students, pushing them a little bit, giving them a bit more language than they're using. Yeah, build on what they already know. I think for me that's the fun area of giving feedback on that emergent language. So really sort of raising students' awareness of what else they could say. Now, I'm not currently teaching at the moment. I'm an education program manager, so I don't have any students at the moment. So I asked some of the wonderful teachers at the centre I work at if they would share some photographs of their whiteboards after they'd dealt with emergent language in the classroom. So I'm very lucky I can show you a few fabulous whiteboard examples, and they're all quite different. So that's why I wanted to show you these three. So the first one here is from lovely Mari. I'll just give you a minute or so to have a look. There's quite a lot going on. So we've got Kate down here and we've got Tom over here. And Kate and Tom are arranging to meet. Kate says, come to mine. We'll go to a pub. Right? And you can see here, there's one pub here and one pub here and one pub here. So Kate says, we'll go to a pub. Right? Tom over here says, no, 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 no. Come to mine. We'll go to the pub. There's only one pub. So Mari was looking at that difference between and the in that context. And she just got a piece of A3 paper out and worked through this emergent language with the students here. A little bit of error correction, but a really nice visual way to show the students which one to use. Yeah, so those students, through that little picture, got an upgrade, and I think probably a very memorable upgrade. Thank you very much, Mari. Next slide here is from Saeed, very, very different. Yeah. So Saeed had done a discussion and the students had used some words, and I think I've got them on the slide here. So this is the language that the students are already using in class. They're quite confident with. Saeed wanted to give them an upgrade. Okay, so he gave them predictable for expected or not surprising. Approved for allowed or agreed. Nothing wrong with allowed or agreed, perfectly good. He's just giving them the upgrade, boosting their language. To copy someone, he's got imitate. new baby, newborn, in any place, wherever. I think, I suppose. So can be something really small as giving them synonyms for I think, I suppose, I guess, I reckon, all of that lovely language there. Now, Saeed's here. It's a great upgrade. It's also very organized. It's very tidy. Doesn't have to be this organized and tidy. I think when we're dealing with emergent language and feedback, it often is a little bit messy on the whiteboard, and it might not have all of the answers there. It might not be perfectly analyzed. I don't think that really matters. I think the most important thing is that you listened to the students, you noticed there was some kind of gap, and you gave them some language, you gave them that upgrade. All right, third example we're going to have a look at is from Margot. I think this is probably a more sort of classic example. I think her students were doing some kind of discussion warmer on or talking about the youngest person that you know. Margot monitored, she listened, she heard the gap, and this was the feedback that she gave them. Yeah. And you can see some nice stretching the students a little bit here with premature. We've got lovable at the end. Yeah, I'd like to, it'd be really nice to put a little line down there. And after lovable, you could maybe elicit adorable from the students as well to sort of build on what they've already got there, stretching them a little bit more. Really nice. Yeah. Lucky students getting those upgrades. All right, good. So once we've listened, we've monitored, we've heard this gap. I've got on this slide here some of that useful language for giving students an upgrade. So I'm just going to let you have a look at that for about 30 seconds. So I think what's important here when we're dealing with that emergent language in feedback is that we package it in a way that says, you're not actually being ineffective with your communication. Yeah, that was good communication, but this is just an upgrade. Yeah. And you can also elicit a lot from students in this stage of feedback. Yeah, just remind them they might have that language, but they're just not actively using it. So if you elicit it from the students, they remember, oh yeah, I do know that word. I do know other ways to say delicious. Yeah, I can use a bit more of a range of language. Okay, good. So at this point, we've really talked about what emergent language is and how you deal with it. You might have a few concerns at this point. So I'm just going to give you 10, 15 seconds to have a think. What are your concerns? What are your worries at this point about dealing with emergent language in feedback? Yeah, probably, or I wonder, time for me. Every time I think about this, we're very busy in the class. We've got a lot to do, right? And a lot of people say, I just don't have time to deal with that. Yeah, good. Thank you, Sophia. Yeah, so there are some issues, some things that we need to think about here. Jazz, really good question. I think if you look at the previous slide with the language and we do try and package it in a way that tells them that their initial communication was effective, it works, but we just give them an upgrade, give them an option. Yes, you can also say this. Yeah. Don't give them too much. Yeah, good, Jennifer. Good. All right, I've actually got two little texts here that talk about, yeah, good, some of these concerns that you're talking about. Excellent, everyone. Yeah, I'm just going to give you about 30 seconds to read these two. I think they're very similar to your ideas. Yeah, so have a read through and check them against your initial concerns. Yeah, interesting. Good. Your comments are great. I think generally teachers are pretty good at making sure that it's not coming across as a criticism or negative. I think most teachers that I see are super good at creating that atmosphere that's very positive in the classroom. Yeah, but I think that is something to think about. We want to package it in a way that shows them it's an option, you know. But we've got to balance these things, haven't we? The target language and the stuff that we have to get through and the time. Do we have time to go deeper into the language? And I think that's a really important concern. I would say, though, that we are really, really good as teachers at balancing things in the language classroom. And as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about all the balances that we deal with. You know, accuracy versus fluency, challenge versus support, when we correct, when we don't correct, how much controlled practice, how much freer practice, teaching and testing. You know, our mixed ability classes, we're balancing all the time. You think about all the different needs and personalities that you have in your classroom. You are very, very good at making decisions that balance things. Yeah, so I think we look at this sort of emergent language and feedback. It's another tool you have in your toolbox. You'll make a good decision as to when it's appropriate to use it and when perhaps you don't have time and you have to focus on your target language or whatever material you have to get through. You'll make the right decision, I think, because you're pretty good at balancing things. So always trust your instincts in those situations. Wanted to have a quick look at our very sort of classic lesson shapes and really start to think about when we might have those opportunities to deal with emergent language in feedback. So I've got a sort of classic skills lesson here with our context setting, skills development, post-text follow-up, our language lesson, also context setting, language clarification, and then some controlled and freer practice. So if we think about these two classic lesson shapes, we've actually got a lot of opportunities in context setting. There's normally some kind of speaking to set the context, some kind of warmer. There's some emergent language that we could deal with there. And in the skills, this post-text follow-up. And depending on what happens in your language lesson, freer practice potentially as well. So there are lots of opportunities, lots of language learning opportunities that we could take. Wanted to also have a quick look at some coursebook material. So this is from Voices. I think it's Voices Intermediate. Classic writing lesson, and they've got a little bit of a reading as input. And so I just had a quick look at this page and I wanted to highlight opportunities if you were using this material where you could deal with emergent language in feedback. And the first one here, we've got the speaking, the warm-up, you know, discuss in pairs. Yeah. There's opportunities there in feedback. Then they do a little bit of gist reading. And if you're doing a pair check after the gist reading, there's some really nice questions here at the end of that gist task, which would definitely generate some speaking. So an option there to make some notes on their emergent language. And then down here, they do a little bit of brainstorming. They pick a topic to write this how-to article on, and they can do a little of what I call say it first. So before they write, they say it first. Yeah, so when they brainstorm, they don't just do it silently on paper, but they talk their way through it. So just on that first column there in the textbook, a lot of opportunities to give students that upgrade. Yeah, so I think it's all about just identifying those opportunities, having the tool in your toolbox to use if it's appropriate. Yeah. So thinking about that, I'm interested in your answers here. So when I asked the teachers in my staff room, we got a few different answers here. So I'm interested to see what you all think. Whenever students do a speaking task that goes for how many minutes, you should consider dealing with emergent language in feedback. Put your answers in the chat box, please. And there's no right or wrong here. This is just my opinion. So would like to see what everybody else thinks. Okay, good. Yeah. So you can see we've got quite a range in the chat box as well. Yeah, good. Yeah. Nice. I'm really happy to see some of these answers actually. That's great. Yeah, I actually went with 5. But I think naturally I would maybe go a little bit lower, 3 or 4. I just think if students are speaking for that long, we should be listening and we should be validating. It's not enough for me just to get some feedback on the content. There's got to be some error correction, but also if they've got those gaps, let's push them, stretch them, see what else is going on. Yeah. Great answers, everyone. All right. We're going to do a little bit of practice now. So this is the lovely Pim. She's from Thailand. And I have a very short video here. It's about 2 minutes. And she's talking about the best city in Australia, which, as you all know, is, of course, Adelaide. And I would like you to listen to Pim and just get a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil or your phone or however you like to do it. Just make a few notes on what you would give her feedback on. Yeah, what emergent language would you give her feedback on? Yeah. Remember, as you do this, she's not your student, right? So it's going to be more challenging than if she were your student in your class because you don't know her. So bear that in mind. She's also in a room on her own, so it's perhaps not the most natural piece of speaking. Right? So 2 minutes, just make a note. What would you give her feedback on? Here we go.
Okay. I'm Pim and I will talk about Adelaide. Adelaide is quiet city that I've been because I've never been the foreign country before. Here is my first time in Australia, and even though that Adelaide is quiet city, I like Adelaide. Even though that I'm not travel a lot in Adelaide, but the weather, the environment is better than my home country, and I like Adelaide, but I live far from the city because I live in around Dublin. I need to take 2 hours for travel to come to the city. A little bit tired for the class in the morning, and even though the weather is better than my country, I like it because I don't like a hot weather. I like cold weather, spring in here because I'm living in Adelaide for 5 months already, and I'm trying to travel around Adelaide, but somewhere that I've ever been, like Elizabeth or Salisbury Station, is a little bit scary because a lot of how to call a lot of crazy person, but it would be fine because my uncle will pick up me every day. And Adelaide, I love London Mall. Is you can go to every shop assistant because I like to shopping makeup. I'm usually shopping makeup every week. By some week I shopping with Sephora, some week I shopping with cosmetic, and also it's cheaper. For me, it's cheaper. Also, Chemist Warehouse. Thank you.
All right, that was Pim, everybody. Now, just in the interest of time, I'm going to go straight to the next slide and show you what I focused on when I heard her. Now, remember this might be very different to what you've got, and that's absolutely fine because when we go back and think about the balance here, there was a lot that we could have given her feedback on. Yeah, well, she spoke very fluently, very clear communication, but there was actually a lot in there that we could help her on. But we're not going to do all of it because that would be way too much. Yeah, she would feel devastated probably. But we're going to pick a few things that we think are helpful. And for me, I picked this language here that even though Adelaide is a quiet city, and I think I'd get that up on the whiteboard, and then I'd elicit from students some options. Yeah, give them 3 options. Yeah, even though Adelaide is a quiet city, there's a lot you can do here. Yeah. Elicit the form a little bit, show them that you can swap them around. Rundle Mall is often busy, even though Adelaide is a quiet city. Just show her that, give her that upgrade. Yeah, elicit from the students to the board as well. I'd think about giving her, just reminding her of that present simple there. Let me see if I can get that up. Just eliciting what's in that gap there. Getting that for her. And then there's just one other thing that I think I wanted to deal with as well. Maybe elicit that preposition, what's missing here, go shopping for something. And then because she was really quite excited about makeup, that's obviously a thing that she talks about. I wanted to give her some phrases that allowed her to express that in a slightly more natural way. So shopping for makeup is my thing, is my passion. It's what I love to do. Something like that. Yeah. It might look a bit messy on the board. You might have chosen some completely different language. That's completely fine, because remember, if Pim were your student, you would know a little bit more about what she would need the most. Yeah, what would be best to give her. So I appreciate that this practice is it's just practice. But I hope that's an example of a few things that you could focus on. All right, I'm conscious of the time. Last slide, everyone. A little bit of reflection. Think about your next class, or maybe for next week. Just have a look at your plan. If you're making notes for your plan, however you do it, is there an opportunity to just build that focus on emergent language into your feedback somewhere? If there is, add it to your plan. I think you'll get really positive responses from your students as they feel that you're filling that gap that they've got, or you're giving them that language that they need as they feel that they need it. Yep. All right, I think that's enough from me, everyone. I hope we've done all of these things. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions. Yeah, Jazz, that's interesting. I think from my experience, when you give them that feedback on that emergent language, that often is the language that they take on board and they use, because they feel that they need it. Yeah, it's also like timing. When do you get it? You want to get it to them before that phrase or that language is kind of fossilized as well. So timing is an issue there. But I think our job as teachers is to give them that language. Yeah, in a way that hopefully sells it to them to want to take it on board. Any other questions? All right, I think I'm pretty much on time. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I agree, Bernard, absolutely.
Thanks, Kathy. And thanks everybody for your participation as well. For me, this was just such a good reminder of that just-in-time learning and how powerful it is. And I was reflecting back on when I've been learning languages in the past, and when you're searching for words, when you're talking and you're not, you're being clumsy and you don't quite have the right word, and it's so powerful for someone to be able to jump in and provide that clarification at the right moment. But yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. There's a lot of really positive feedback in the chat there. But most of all, it was extremely clear and extremely relevant. And I'm sure you've inspired people to go away and try this out in their classes next week if they're not already doing it. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Sophie.
We'll see you next time, everyone.